with them?
I mean, everybody's hurting. We talked about this, a lot this season. How valuable these experiences are, these learning lessons are for us. We talked about it. These are things that you can't experience unless you go through it. These guys had a phenomenal regular season. Each of them grew in their own different way. Those guys should be proud. They put this organization and brought it back, to where it's an organization that's being talked about again as a promising organization, and, a ton of things ahead in the future. As much as it hurts, these are the things that you go through that make you a better basketball player. Losses like these make you aware of the areas you need to improve in. They make you understand all the things that everybody tells you about playoff basketball all year long. Are you prepping and doing the right things to put yourself in position to be successful when the playoffs come about? And then you sit back, you reflect, and if you care the way our guys care, you do whatever you have to do in the summer to make yourself a better basketball player and more prepared for these moments.
When you think, in the season as a whole, like you said, 51 wins, getting to the first round, how successful is this season in just the growth of this team?
Winning 50 games in the NBA is not easy. And, again, these guys went through a lot of ups and downs, a lot of growth, a lot of learning from an individual standpoint, from a team standpoint. They accomplished a lot, and I think they deserve credit for that. Ultimately, what our goals are in these moments. And no team has ever gone from, out of it to a champion. Every single team that we've talked about that you want to emulate and model yourself after has gone through some extreme failures in difficult circumstances. But that's motivated those guys to come back and be better. And I don't expect our guys to be any different.
Tom Withers, AP. J.B., the inexperience is one thing. How disappointed, though, are you with the rebounding differential every game?
I think that's a part of our learning experience, Tom, to be honest with you. There's a new level of physicality in the playoffs. Are you doing all the things necessary through the season so that when you get to the playoffs, it's not an uncomfortable feeling when things are as physical as they are? And, we go back and we watch the film, and there's plenty of collisions. We just didn't win enough of them. And I think that's, the lesson that our guys have to take from this and sit back, look at it, and figure out how they can prepare themselves better for those moments.
Chris Fedor, Cleveland.com. Hey, JB.
What's up, Chris?
When you immediately think about this series, what is the difference between you guys and the Knicks in this one?
It's the physicality. I think that's, when you look at even tonight what they were trying to do, in that first half, it was just put your head down and go to your spot, right? That forced you into help, and now that was more kickouts, that was offensive rebounds. I also think, give them credit for sure. I thought, Jalen Brunson obviously had a masterful series. Their individual guys played to their strengths and knew how they needed to help. That experience matters. The experience that those guys have gained, Josh Hart and those guys, that experience and understanding of who they are and how they help when things are tough and, gritty. So give them a ton of credit for it. But, when you lose the rebounding battle in every game that you lose, and it's not from a lack of effort, that's when the physicality comes into play.
If this is indeed the final lesson of this season, what is that lesson?
Just how the rules of engagement change when the league matters most, right? There are, in regular season games that the finesse, can help you and get you through it. These games you have to be built to win in the trenches. And, you have to be built to hit again, and then hit one more time. Again, there is a difference. And I think our guys learn the difference, and they'll do what they got to do this summer to be better.
Jason,
you may have answered this in bits and pieces, but what are you most upset, disappointed, frustrated with leaving here?
I'm not, to be honest with you. I'm not disappointed in these guys at all. Obviously, we're frustrated that we're in this spot and that we lost, and our season is over. But I think our guys gave us what they had. And you cannot manufacture these experiences. You cannot practice what this is going to be like. You can talk about it till you're blue in the face, but until you go through it, you have to go through it and feel it. And it is a miserable part of our business, but you have to fail in order to be successful. If everything is just easy and smooth, right, you never learn. And again, it's commonplace in all sports. You get yourself to a certain level, and then somebody punches you in the mouth. And then you wake up the next day, you reevaluate, you know what's important to you, and then you go out and try to assure that it never happens again. And that's where the great teams are born. And again, I know this group in that locker room. We have a special group, but it takes these, and it sucks, but it takes these.
Specifically to Jared, he did have playoff experience coming in, so that doesn't really apply to him. Why do you think he struggled so badly in this series?
I think their size weighed on him, to be honest with you. Mitchell Robinson is a big dude, and he understands exactly how, he impacts winning. And I thought he went out and did it. He impressed his will on this series. And, 11 offensive rebounds in a closeout game, give him credit because, his will outweighed ours in that moment.
Ashley Bastock, Cleveland.com. J.B., I know the other day you talked about learning happens when it hurts the most. So, kind of along the lines of what you've been saying, but knowing these guys and what the reaction was after the game, how much do you think that the physicality part of this series is going to kind of fuel what some of them do in the offseason?
I know it will. There's already guys in that locker room that are talking about it. So, again, you learn and you have to. It hurts, but you got to learn from it.
And then just, watching this series play out, I know the switch flipping throughout the regular season, you guys were so good in come from behind wins, but I know Darius talked about, he wasn't sure if that was a good stat to have later into the season. Do you think, this series at all, that's just, the final lesson of that switch flipping doesn't exist in the postseason, really?
Yeah, it's one of, and you guys asked me about it in the regular season, and, we talked about how frustrating it is for coaches. But when you find success sometimes in bad habits, you think it's okay. But, hopefully, and I believe they will, they've learned from that, when the games matter the most, it's not what you're doing now that's going to impact the winning and losing. When the games matter the most, it's what you've done in February and October that are going to impact winning and losing.
Mark Schwab, 19 News. How concerned were you when the series started about the physicality in the sense of how much the Knicks have versus you guys in the league play?
It's one of those things you don't really have a choice about at that point in time. You know what I mean? You're trying to figure out all the things that can give you an advantage. You understand what their strengths are and what, being on the glass. So you're trying to prep for, how you can be earlier in your box outs, how you can have multiple guys boxing people out, how you can surround the floor and shrink the floor so that they're not in a bunch of just one-on-one situations where they can use their size and strength to their advantage. So those are all things that we talked about as a staff and tried to put a plan in place to help us there.
Nate
Ulrich after Beacon Journal. Obviously, the theme is the physicality, but in terms of the mental side of the game, what do you hope guys took from this experience? I know you mentioned before the game, psychological was a word you used. So how much did that play into everything?
I think it did. I think, when you go into, your first playoff game, and then you go to your first playoff game on the road, there is a mental aspect to it. Regular season games, they just don't have that same intensity that the playoffs have. The crowd is into it in another way. The pressure, the mental fatigue of every possession mattering is just not the same in the regular season as it is in the playoffs. So, as much as we talk about the physical aspect of the training, there's a mental aspect of the training as well. Like, can you sustain it, for long periods of time without having that mental fatigue? So, your mind is your greatest tool. And, this is a great opportunity for our guys to just measure themselves and see where they stand.
Danny Cunningham, ESPN Cleveland. JB, other than the physicality aspect, what's the one thing you hope Evan takes away from this series?
Just how difficult everything is. It's just not easy to win playoff basketball. Every small thing that you do now matters. From a simple thing of, where you catch the ball in your offense, where you let your opponent catch the ball, where a mistake in a pick and roll coverage, what it can lean to. I think the details are so important. And you look at whether it's individual players that are great, you look at or teams that have been great. They've been great at the fundamentals of the game. And when the games are as physical as they're going to be and as intense as they're going to be, those small things make a big difference.
Is there anything you've learned about yourself as a coach during the series?
I don't know. I'll think about it and we'll figure it out.
Rachel LWOVU. We talked about that a couple weeks ago about what you've learned as a coach, but can you tell what you've learned about your team? I know it's only been a few minutes, but what have you learned about your team over the season?
I love these dudes. I genuinely do. And I say it time and time again. I have not had one bad day at work with these guys. We've been frustrated. We've been, pissed off at each other, whatever it may be for a moment, but we've never had a bad day together. I love the way they compete. I love the way, they share with one another. I love the way that their focus is just on the game. We don't have outside distractions. We don't have, finger pointing. We don't have guys trying to be bigger than the team. Like, every single one of those guys in that locker room is solely about this team and how they can best help. And I can't say enough good things about those guys.
Last one, Jeff.
Jeff Chudell, News Herald. JB, do you think that, other than the experience, did this series expose any shortcomings on your roster that need to be fixed between now and next season?
Kobe and I will talk about all that stuff, but, again, it takes some time to reevaluate, and we'll reevaluate and figure it out.
Yeah, no wrap.